Thank you. I'd like to welcome all of our speakers up to the front for a question and answer period. Okay, as we're collecting questions, we've got a good number in already, but as the moderator, I do get the privilege of the first question. So many of you did talk about sort of needing to work with people who don't necessarily see your way, whether that be working across silos in a transdisciplinary manner, changing sort of business models, experiencing new cultures, or sort of proposing different diets or different farming practices. And we sort of just started to discuss that at the very end, but what are opportunities you see to help build communication and build trust with people who don't see your way? What are sort of the opportunities you see to build trust across silos?
I was just thinking this when I was listening to Elizabeth. I actually think the biggest thing is it holding that gutter? Is to me it's the ability to tell stories and the narrative. So it was interesting to me, the Smithsonian Museum of American History this year, their version of their theme was for regions and storytelling, and the food section of the museum focused on that as well. And I think being able to tell the stories of both producers and consumers, tell the stories of migrants and their consumption, in the disciplinary pieces, how we each tell the story of how we come to knowledge. I think those are for me the key factors moving forward.
This is one of the challenges, particularly in academia and even other organizations. We're looking for quick fixes, and building trust takes a long time. For example, in the northern parts of Alberta, up in where the indigenous people live and have very dependent upon their ecosystems to survive, our researchers took 10 years to actually, when they went out and worked with the caribou and the wildlife and the disease situations, to bring the information back to the communities, and also very first engage those communities with the decision making about what they want, what they see, and do the participatory mapping. All of this takes a long time. It's not a quick fix. So building trust takes time, and it takes expertise.
Just to add on to that, I think that having it come from communities and having community involvement really is key. But I also think that it takes being respectful and listening and saying, I hear you, and instead of saying, I hear you, but I hear you, and to come to solutions.
I have to use a government example here. After 17 years in the U.S. federal government, one of the answers where when you develop a policy and a regulation, you just say, well, just educate them. Just tell them what to do. Okay.
All right, thanks. Next question. Can we or should we see as a goal to de-link the perception of improved social economic status with abandoning healthier lifestyles and eating patterns from their own culture? So should I? Okay, so there's this perception that with improved social economic status, we abandon sort of healthy, simple eating patterns. That's something that's maybe part of your own culture, but as people become more economically, they have more economic resources, they may abandon that and actually eat an unhealthier in an unhealthier way that's different from the culture that they grew up with. So should we see as a goal sort of connecting people back to their cultural roots, so to speak?
I think that is interesting because in many low and middle income countries, some of the foods that are the cheapest are often very ultra processed foods. I can give an example from when I was in Haiti. Mothers would buy what were called Chicos, which were essentially the puffed Cheetos. In a bag of those, they're perfect size for the hand of your child, but a bag of those was 5 cents. It's very hard to then explain to mothers why they should be buying the fruit and then cleaning it, etc. So I think that supporting local and traditional diets is important, but I don't think that it's necessarily something that is just on the upper, higher socioeconomic status where it's an issue.
Well, could we flip that for a moment and say, is there sort of a link between the idea that eating healthier is something only for a wealthier class?
I don't think so, but I think that we need a whole food system change to be able to support caregivers and people to be able to make those decisions within their food environment and in terms of what foods are available to them.
I also think there's a long history of telling different communities of people what is healthy, right? And so I think that it's changing the definition of what you think of as health in relation to different culinary and cultural communities, right? So the imposition, that history of imposition, I think, is one that we have to back away from in some ways and recognize how people engage in communities around food, right? So I almost stepping away, I think, from that judgment of the relationship between health and economics.
Bonnie and others have listed governance as a major factor in dealing with sort of the significant issues we've discussed today. Here in Pennsylvania, which groups inform us about legislation relevant to this? Are there groups lobbying for our vision in Harrisburg? Or how do we find out about important legislation that impacts these issues? We'll take a hard pass on that. Okay. Okay. How do we change the toxic masculinity culture around eating meat and or viewing healthy eating as feminine?
And unfortunately, this is my area, and I write about this, and I've written about it a lot in the past, and there is no answer. I think the answer is, in fact, to move away from those binaries. And if you look at practice historically, that it's not always aligned that way. In fact, when you have diets that promote consumption, you do see women partaking of them. Like there are, it depends on how the diet's framed, I guess is what I want to say. I mean, you're the nutritionist. But I actually think there's a general trend towards the commodification of the body and the ways in which, for both men and women, thinking about health has shifted in contemporary times. And so I don't know that meat eating will be and forever as tightly linked to masculinity, or particularly toxic masculinity, as it is. If you look at ad campaigns, that's not the way they're structured anymore. And so if we don't want to necessarily take our cues from industry, but certainly foods are being pitched in different ways.
Yeah, just to add on to that, I think taking a life course perspective is really important in terms of thinking about how different food preferences and gender norms and everything are perpetuated. And I think that offers an opportunity by working with younger generations who could then carry it on and could have intergenerational consequences.
This question is, where are the social scientists? Are we now bringing them into the discussion to better understand attitudes and change behaviors in our food systems? So social scientists did come up some in your discussions. Can we bring them in more, and what opportunities do you see for them to help craft the message for change?
I think social scientists are everywhere. They just have to wear a number of different hats. So raise your hand if you've been trained in any of the social sciences in this room. So there's almost one per table.
About history.
Yeah, you can ask.
I don't know.
Yeah, all in all, I think that they're everywhere. They're in different departments. They're not just in anthropology or sociology or rural sociology or other areas where you might typically look for them.
My original training is as a medical sociologist, and then I moved into studying culture and food. And in medical sociology, there's a long engagement with different health paradigms and different ways of examining. In fact, many of the terms and the concepts that we use, such as medicalization and demedicalization, come out of my field. They're invented by people like in my field, and so I think we're there. I just think we're in different, as Bonnie, we're kind of hiding out in different silos.
Yeah, I'd like to say too, I think as we take a more holistic view of how we produce and eat food, we're going to be encouraging more and more people from lots of different backgrounds to give their perspective, and we're going to make it a much easier place for people of all different types of backgrounds to be able to relate to the kinds of things that we're talking about.
And I just like to poke at academia. We really need to develop courses where social science is taught as part of the sciences. So I am a veterinarian. I mean, I have a bachelor's and master's in animal sciences and a DVM and all this other stuff. I did not know half the things that social scientists did until I actually worked with them. So I'm saying push back those educational opportunities earlier in our careers and have multiple disciplines opportunities for people who want to actually become transdisciplinary. And you can't do that unless you have some social science background.
Are there any examples of transdisciplinary approaches that physicians or vets could incorporate into their practice or work right now?
Somebody talked about pets. Actually, right now with physicians, I believe it could be talking to their clients about the things that we were talking about today, and having a nutrition background, a little bit of science and nutrition, understanding the behavior, listening, and communication sciences are really important in the medical profession. So what we do in teaching professional communications throughout the veterinary career and or the medical career is absolutely foundational to taking this sort of I'm listening, I'm hearing, I'm with you, and I think that helps a lot to build your practice as well as to find out what actually that person, which could represent the community, what that person really needs and wants to say, not what you want them. Asking open-ended questions instead of closed-ended questions. So.
Somebody on the last panel talked about experiential learning as part of that. It's certainly central to the way I teach, but I'd like to suggest that both agriculture and culinary are in fact fields of knowledge and skill. There's this beautiful kitchen in the building over there, and I feel like engagement with actually understanding, learning the physical practice of agriculture. It's sort of a baseline skill. I feel like in the same way that everybody should know how to do a soil test, right? Everybody should know how to use a knife and cut. I mean, these are skill sets, but they're also about the knowledge of how people engage in that practice.
One of the things that has come up across a few presentations is the idea, on one hand, of overload of information, maybe a feeling of exasperation, and on the other side, the opportunity to sort of lead with a clearer vision or sort of inspiration. I know as part of the Living Food Challenge talked about, okay, where are we headed, and let's make it better than where we left. Can each of you talk a little bit about what you see as sort of the exciting moment or sort of the beautiful vision that you have ahead of you that you think is going to sort of pull people or get people excited to follow behind?
Well, I'd like to start on that one. The whole idea behind the Living Food Challenge is to show people that what we're talking about is actually better than what we have right now, and we can have better ways to produce food. We can make food, tasty, delicious. It could be the kind of food that people really want to partake in. These are the kinds of things that we really need to press, that it is better and that people are going to want to go there.
My day job is training practitioners in the food system, and I'm particularly interested in training activist participants, and I love your description of transdisciplinary. I was like, oh yeah, we make smoothies. That is what we do. So this is the 10th year that I've been running this program, and I am deeply impressed by the things that the people that come through the program go out and do, whether they finish or not. They are activists of one form or another in terms of providing interventions into the system, and I think that's that to me is the most hopeful thing on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, what I find most hopeful is that it's actually more of a conversation than it was even a year ago or 2 years ago, with more and more people being willing to engage in conversations about sustainability and diets. I also find it really encouraging that meetings like this, where you are bringing people together for crosstalk. So I think that there are potential opportunities in the future.
I guess my vision that I tried to express in my presentation is that One Health is just not interdisciplinary and multidisciplinary. We need to figure out what the community, what the end user wants, and how do we reach out and engage them from the very beginning of our conceptual framework or our process of how we're going to proceed, and listen to them and be responsive, and then give back information to the communities on how this is going to meet their goals, as well as adding some scientific knowledge to their lives. It's exciting. Well, I get frustrated when I hear One Health. People say One Health this, One Health that. Well, I believe One Health is not just One Health, it's a One Health approach. It's an approach to how we're going to make the food systems in this world be sustainable, avoid the severe pathogen loads and the changes that are happening, that we have food safety, food security, through this hopefully adopting transdisciplinary approaches.
Can we have one more round of applause for our panelists today? Okay. That ends our session. I'm going to turn things over to Richard for closing remarks.
Well, thank you everyone for sticking it out. It was a long day. We had a lot of really great presentations today. I think a lot of really great discussion. I hope you got a lot out of it. I hope we made a lot of smoothies together. I think what's really interesting to me is this idea of bringing people together from lots of different disciplines to talk about some of these issues. We heard lots of different speakers from lots of different backgrounds. We know everyone in our audience will come from lots of different areas as well. I think this is really great to get this kind of conversation going. I hope you've gotten a lot out of it as well. I do want to thank our sponsors again, and I also want to thank our presenting partners as well. I would also like to encourage you to check our website. In a couple of weeks, we'll have a lot of the presentations on the website, and spread the word how important this is, that we all work together in continuing this kind of work. And now I'd like to ask Dr. Sarah States to come up and she has a couple of things to say to you as well.
Thanks so much, everybody, for sticking around and for joining us. I want to again thank everybody, all of our speakers, our sponsors, our partners, Mike Parkinson and Val Beasley for being really great planning committee members and getting all of these, finding all these speakers and making this event happen. Also Gabe Tylo for being a moderator for this session. I also have to thank all of the wonderful FIP staff who made this happen behind the scenes, our Sodexo team for that wonderful breakfast and lunch. Can we give them a round of applause, please? And for the rest of our staff who just kept things running today. I'm just going to put out a few reminders. Any physicians that were here today and would like that continuing education credit, please hand me your evaluations at the end of the day. I'll be right up front here. Veterinarians, if you also want to receive continuing education credits, I have your certificates here. Finally, all those name tags out there, do you really want them? Do you really want to keep them? We will reuse them. So please put them in the basket. That is, okay, it's on the table right outside. Thank you, Jennifer. And that's all I have today. Thank you again for being here with us today, and please have a lovely evening. Thanks.